people are going to play the next Elder Scrolls game for a decade, 2 decades, and that does change the way you think about how you architect it from the get-go.
When it comes to any actual news about the Elder Scrolls 6, there really hasn't been much. We've been living off a 36-second teaser and a handful of sentences for years, and somehow that's been enough to fuel thousands of lore breakdowns and people saying, "Wait, is that Hammerfell?" Bethesda, and more specifically Todd Howard, says he wants the next Elder Scrolls to live for a decade or two. That's incredibly ambitious, but also a bit dangerous. There's a big difference between a game that lasts decades and a game you actually want to keep playing. So, how exactly does longevity happen? What makes a game still worth going back to, even 10 years down the line? It's certainly not with infinite chores or a map riddled with checklists, and it's not with radiant systems disguised as content. In this video, I'm going to attempt to follow the breadcrumbs we do have, official statements, Microsoft court docs, and the studio's recent design patterns. My goal isn't to predict the exact release day down to the Tuesday, it's to essentially map the choices that will decide whether the next Elder Scrolls is going to be as legendary as Skyrim was. Can they avoid their recent stumbles and learn from their mistakes? Ever wander into a dungeon just to check it out and resurface 3 hours later with a new backstory and a stolen cheese wheel collection? You already know the feeling Elder Scrolls 6 has to capture. If you've ever bounced off an open world because it kept handing you copy-pasted errands, then you know what it has to avoid. It needs to be ambitious without going bland, and timeless without burying the fun under busywork. Bethesda has done it before, but has taken some pretty significant stumbles since then. So, can they do it again? Now, as I see it, there are actually 2 Bethesdas squatting in the same office building. It kind of feels like the push and pull between a studio that wants to tell stories and one that wants to hit a checklist quota. On the one hand, you've got the Bethesda we all fell in love with, the Master Craftsman. This is the studio that handed us guild quest lines with actual twists, dungeons that feel like stories, and NPCs who somehow act like they've got jobs and hobbies when you're not even looking. You know, the illusion that they don't just stand in the tavern until you decide to show up and ruin their evening. But then there's the other Bethesda. Let's call this one the efficiency expert. This is the Bethesda that can crank out 100 things to do with one click. It's like Bethesda turned into a medieval game show host. And behind quest marker number 3, another cave full of bandits. Before you know it, your map looks like someone sneezed icons all over your screen. Both have their uses, sure, but the big question is, which twin gets the wheel? First, the handcraft and the old school loop. You leave town for one objective and come back with 3 new tales because the world ambushed you with curiosity. A cave isn't just cave number 27. It's a mini narrative with a forgotten note, a puzzle, and an enjoyable payoff. The quest lines start to interlock with each other. You can feel the human fingerprints. But then comes the content generator. This is Bethesda's Radiant systems, procedural layouts, repeatable tasks. It does have some value. They shouldn't completely scrap it. A good Radiant system keeps the world from going dead when you're on hour 80. It supports roleplay like, let's be a bounty hunter tonight, and helps fill up space in massive worlds. So the problem isn't exactly the tool, but how much it's implemented. When the Radiant generator becomes the main focus, your brain starts speed reading locations because you've seen this exact shack with this exact crate 3 times already. There's also a deeper issue here, which is motivation. Handcrafted design invites you because it rewards curiosity with moments only you found in that order. The Radiant system keeps you busy, which can be fine, but busy is not the fuel that carries a game for a decade. Those crafted gameplay beats where mechanics and narrative collide in a way a template never quite nails. Now, with all that being said, let's take a look at why Skyrim's particular balance still works, and what that teaches Elder Scrolls 6 about staying powerful for years without becoming too predictable. The reason Skyrim has lasted so long is that its world keeps ambushing you with fun distractions. You leave Riverwood just trying to return a claw, and suddenly you're knee-deep in Draugr family drama, shouting a dragon off a cliff, and oh great, you've joined a secret death cult before dinner. All of that is intentional, fun distractions that can keep you occupied while unintentionally ignoring the main quest line for hours at a time. Skyrim is also great at understanding tempo. The map is cleverly stitched together with fun surprises every few minutes. A roadside altar, a hunter's camp, an odd conversation in a tavern that spirals into a 3-hour detour. Fast travel exists, but walking is often better because the route is the fun gameplay content. Systems amplify all of this instead of replacing it. Discovering and using shouts creates fun stories. Using stealth is a way to solve problems you weren't supposed to solve. The physics systems mean a misfired spell can send a fight sideways in a way you'll laugh about later. Those moments feel personal because they erupt inside hand-built spaces with context. And here's the secret sauce for why Skyrim never really leaves people's hard drives. It shipped as a complete game, then handed modders the keys. The modding community didn't need to patch holes in a weak game. They used what was there to stretch it into a never-ending experience. The core adventure still holds up on its own. That's how you end up with a game that essentially feels bottomless. And sure, Skyrim's got radiant systems, bounties, odd jobs, miscellaneous chores, but they know their place. If you burn out on guild arcs or Daedric contracts, no biggie, grab a bounty and play bounty hunter, treasure courier, or questionable package delivery guy for a night. So that leads to this question: where did that gameplay balance start to wobble for Bethesda? In comes Fallout 4, and this is sorta where the balance started to slip. Not because it abandoned handcrafted quests, there truly are some bangers in there, but because the Radiant systems kept getting in the way. You can feel it the moment the Minutemen loop boots up. A settlement pings, you help. Another pings, you help. Then you realize the loop is seemingly endless. The structure is functional because it gives you a world that always has something to do, but that could lead to tedious moments pretty quickly. Your quest log starts to feel bloated with nearly endless tasks, and suddenly the Commonwealth starts to feel like a checklist to clear. Now, I'm not trying to be a complete downer on Fallout 4. It still has sharp, wonderful arcs. Nick Valentine's detective strand, the Silver Shroud roleplay fantasy, the Cabot mystery, faction storylines that intertwine and force you to make some compelling choices. Those are memorable because they're specific. Names, motives, consequences. But the face of the day-to-day becomes the settlement drumbeat and the errands. Rescue the hostage, clear the ghouls, defend the farm. All mechanically sound, but narratively thin. After a dozen repetitions, your brain starts going on autopilot because it already knows the ending. Settlement building is the same story in some ways. As a creative sandbox, it's awesome. As a system tied to endless notifications, defense ratings, and repeating raids, it ranges from I'm building my dream home into I'm maintaining someone else's problem. For some players, that's bliss. For many, it's busyness that keeps interrupting the quest they originally sat down to do. Actual real consequences can matter too. Radiant tasks can annoyingly reset the board. You clear an area, it repopulates. You rescue a settler, a new one is kidnapped elsewhere. It seems fine at first, games need reusable assets, but the world stops feeling changed by your presence. All that effort and it simply shrugs as if you were never there. That being said, none of this makes Fallout 4 a bad game. As I said earlier, it's filled with tons of fun moments, and when it hits, it really hits. I still go back to it, experimenting with different mod lists, as is the Bethesda way. But when repeatables become the main part, players learn the pattern, optimize it, and check out emotionally. The loop is still good for collecting XP, but it stops being memorable. And those fun, you'll never guess what happened stories are what keep people reinstalling years later. If Elder Scrolls 6 wants to last for a decade or two, it needs to treat Radiant content as a safety net and a post-game playground, not as the face of the adventure. Let the map pull you off the road with that classic Bethesda exploration we all know and love. Starfield shoots for the stars, literally, and lands on a design problem you can feel in your bones. Massive scale without consistent surprise. 1,000 planets sound like freedom until you can start to spot and predict the pattern. You touch down, see the same kinds of POIs, and then run a familiar loop. The wonder we all know and love from Bethesda dies the second your brain starts spotting the templates and reused assets. Traversal is also part of it. In Starfield, the connective tissue often collapses into menus and loading screens. You select the system, pick the spot, and then arrive. Efficient, I guess. Memorable, not so much. It feels like you're constantly losing the chance for the world to ambush you with stories. The thing that Bethesda is actually known for. Roguelikes have proven procedural points of interest can work, but they thrive because each run radically reinterprets your tools. Starfield's procedural content often reinterprets your route, not your play. You get another outpost, another facility, another pirate nest, and you know roughly how it'll go. The layout changes while the experience stays the same. Now, there's some good news in the middle of that critique. It's not all bad. Systems like shipbuilding and loadout tinkering are excellent. Faction arcs like the Crimson Fleet, SysDef, and UC Politics show flashes of the handcrafted voice people love. Gunplay feels crunchy and the best it's been. The art direction crushed it. At times it felt like it was carrying the game on its back. So it wasn't necessarily about the absence of quality, it's the ratio of actual handcraft to the procedural staple. This all loops back to the wonder aspect. In Skyrim, every 5 or 10 minutes, something handcrafted tries to hijack your plan. In Starfield, minutes can pass with nothing but resource pings and familiar layouts. That's a pacing choice they deliberately made, but it teaches Elder Scrolls 6 a sharp lesson. If you're making exploration the focal point, you gotta make it more than set dressing. So what's the takeaway from Starfield? The Galaxy Brain ambition is all well and good, but pack the world like a uniquely crafted backpack, and not a stale cargo hold. Fewer biomes with thick identity beat endless biomes with thin personality. If you need fast travel, make walking to that next point so interesting that players feel they're missing stories by skipping it. When Todd says he wants the next Elder Scrolls to live for a decade, 2 decades, he's not wrong. He's describing the dream. The trap is confusing durability with desirability. Games can become timeless because the first 80 hours are unforgettable, and the next 800 are flexible. There are 2 ways to chase years of play. One is basically the chores, let's call it. Daily loops, refillable side quests or missions, systems that keep you busy. The other is the handcrafted content, unique quests with consequences, systems that collide in surprising ways, in a world that remembers you. The first pads your hour counter, the second pads your stories. Only one of those keeps people reinstalling 5+ years later. A decades-strong Elder Scrolls 6 ships with finishable arcs that feel like real decisions, factions that lock doors when you choose, dungeons that tell singular stories, named characters who don't shrug off world changes just because the framework says their task resets on Tuesdays. When players feel satisfied, they come back for "what if I chose differently?" Character builds are also important. Mutually exclusive routes, build-specific solutions, and region-based allegiances make replay a curiosity engine. If a stealth archer, battle mage, and speech-maxed trickster each unlock unique lines, vendors, or outcomes, replayability is baked into the fiction. Of course, Bethesda's strength was always the travel aspect, treating it like content and not just another loading screen. That doesn't mean banning convenience. It means making walking the best choice because the world keeps throwing engaging stories at you. Curate the loot and economy. If every chest is a vending machine, upgrades start to blur together. More identity-rich items, named gear tied to quests, turn rewards into memories. The drop you remember 5 years later isn't +2 to stats. It's the blade I stole from the barrow after reading the Mad Scholar's journals. When it comes to postgame, it should feel like an epilogue. Radiant systems can be used as a sandbox that reacts to your world state. Reclaimed forts pushing bandits elsewhere. Roads becoming safer or more dangerous based on choices. Caravans changing routes because you backed a faction. That's potentially endless content that acknowledges the ending, not content that pretends the ending never happened. Then, unlock the long fuse, expansions and mods. Expansions should feel like legit adventures with a voice, and the mod scene thrives when you give it a stable toolchain, sensible limits, and room for wild ideas. Mods don't rescue a hollow core, they extend a rich one. That should, at least theoretically, be the path to a 10-year life. Build to love first, build to last second. If Elder Scrolls 6 nails that order, The decade, 2 decades promise takes care of itself. So, what exactly do we know about the next Elder Scrolls anyway? First, the where. Fans keep circling Hammerfell, High Rock, or a border blend of both. That coastline and mountain silhouette from the old teaser sent people into forensic geography, and the case for this region writes itself. Redguard deserts and harbors rubbing up against Breton highlands and scheming city-states. That mix is perfect for handcrafted quests, because Culture Clash could provide amazing story hooks. A Hammerfell forward map means caravans, corsairs, and sword saint duels. A High Rock tilt leans into noble intrigue, mage cabals, and 1,000 backroom betrayals. A split province approach could deliver strong biomes without going infinite, which is exactly the depth over breadth lesson we've been hammering. Then, the when. Some speculation pushes for a generation after Skyrim, letting the world show scars from the last era without being handcuffed to the exact timeline. Others float a prequel arc to revisit old factions and lost cities. Post-Skyrim lets choices ripple through books, bards, and background chatter. A prequel invites bold tonal swings. Either way, the point is the same. Pick an era that lets consequences breathe. As for the mechanics, this is pure wishlist territory, but the patterns seem consistent. Bethesda must make traversal that's a game again. Climbing, mantling, and tricky routes that make walking the best choice because the world keeps you distracted. Combat that bends to builds. Spellcrafting that's more intuitive and has more options. Parry riposte depth for melee. Sneaky social tools beyond press to pickpocket. Territory that shifts and changes. Roads get safer or worse depending on who you back. Trade routes move. Forts flip hands and actually stay flipped. Don't overdo the Radiant system, and use it more as a tool that can remix your world state after the credits, instead of fronting the campaign with tedious busywork. On the technical side of things, it all seems to point to the same engine family as Starfield, the Creation Engine 2 evolved. Hopes are high for denser cities without loading every doorway, better AI schedules that make NPCs feel alive, and streaming that keeps exploration fluid. If the tech budget goes to traversal, schedules, and quest tooling, not just pretty vistas, it could be a game changer. But the Creation Engine has shown its limitations, so we'll see. Bethesda already proved they could do this. The handcrafted voice, the quests with meaning, the dungeons with identity, the overall exploration, made Skyrim feel like a place worth returning to. When the Radiant system steps in front of that, you get the Fallout 4 tipping point in the Starfield déjà vu. So, let me know in the comments, do you think Bethesda currently has what it takes to make another legendary Elder Scrolls? After what we've seen with their last few entries, it sometimes feels tough to remain optimistic. They know the formula, they just need to master it once more. If you like this video and want to see more like it, feel free to leave a like or subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.